Good afternoon. Garland Nixon here with the Honorable Dmitry Polyansky. He is the ambassador for Russia, and we've got some important things to talk about. Let's talk. Good afternoon. Garland Nixon here with the Russian ambassador, Dmitry Polyansky. I certainly appreciate you taking your time, sir. Thank you very much for coming on with us today.
Thank you, Garland.
One of the things that is in great discussion now, of course, is the hope for some kind of a diplomatic resolution to Ukraine. Part of the discussion is, it's back and forth. Who's talking to who? Has President Trump talked to President Putin? Do you have any comments or thoughts on the discussion that's in the air that has us all confused?
Well, it's a very strange situation of what's happening right now. It resembles rather media diplomacy or megaphone diplomacy, because from the US side, of course, because we haven't got anything tangible and practical from the new administration that we could really analyze and make our conclusion on whether they are on right way to bring us all to the peaceful resolution of the Ukrainian crisis. There are certain elements of the puzzle, but we don't see the puzzle in its totality. So some of the statements are encouraging. Some of the statements show that certain work is being done there to really understand the root causes of the crisis and to put us all on the sustainable track. But some others are disappointing, and they are rather maybe qualified as kind of the cowboy diplomacy of cowboy policy that this administration sometimes displays vis-a-vis other countries. That of course will not work with Russia. So it's very contradictory, and we also hear statements from President Trump, something like that there has been quite a good progress in the resolution of the Ukrainian issue, that there have been contacts. Frankly, judging from what the press secretary of my president, Mr. Peskov, repeatedly said, I think even today, but for sure yesterday and the day before yesterday, still it's not translated into any practical steps that would make us confident that there is a conversation between our two leaders or between our experts that really would help to resolve the Ukrainian crisis. So that's where we are. And we also here in New York, we are not being approached by anyone. Moreover, I would say that the American mission here doesn't have its head so far, and the majority of its team, because the designated ambassador, Ms. Stefanik, has not yet turned up here in the headquarters. The mission awaits her, the American mission, but they can't give us any timeline when to expect her to come. And of course, we understand also that before that moment, before she comes with some concrete instructions, maybe from the President of the United States, it would be naive to expect any breakthroughs, any activity here in New York, in Security Council or on the margins of the Security Council. So far, that's the state of things that we have.
Let me ask you this. My understanding regarding an eventual resolution is that, to a large extent, it's necessary to address the issues that was brought about by the Russian side in December, just prior to the beginning of the special military operation. And one of those, of course, an important one that we all know about, is the expansion of NATO. Even now, there are military bases being built in Finland and expanded on the Russian border. Your thoughts on, does that affect the ability to get some kind of to discuss some kind of a resolution, and how does that dynamic affect the work that will be needed to be done to conclude this diplomatically?
Well, the expansion of NATO in breach of all the understandings that have been reached at the moment of the collapse of the Soviet Union and of the emergence of Russia and the emergence of the new Europe. This is the underlying factor that is preventing, I think, preventing stability in the world and stability in Europe, first and foremost. It was a big mistake for NATO to start its strategy of portraying Russia as an enemy, of the attempts to build security architecture in Europe against Russia and not with Russia. There were a lot of chances to do it otherwise, and we made a lot of attempts to get on terms on this issue, and there were glimpses of hopes when there was a Russia-NATO Act signed in 1995, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe later. I may be confusing the dates, but still, I think that the Munich speech of President Putin of 2007 was a clear alarm bell to everyone who was following this issue, and it was a very good moment for all the actors, all the stakeholders, to step on the right path of resolution of this issue to avoid collision. But unfortunately, the conclusions that were made by some countries were totally wrong, and it brought us to the situation where we are right now. Well, as for Finland and Sweden being in NATO, of course, it was the choice of their elites. I don't think it was the choice of their people, frankly, but rather the elites who monopolized this issue. And it's, in my understanding, in my belief, it goes totally in contrary to the interests of this country. Finland was greatly benefiting from its status, from its position as a neutral country on the border with Russia, having Russian resources, Russian tourists. A lot of people bought real estate in Finland, but this has all gone. Finland has become a corner of Europe, which is not interesting to anyone. It has provided its territory for military bases of NATO, and it has put itself into the crosshairs of Russian weaponry. If potential conflict is going to take place. Same about Sweden. So we think that this is a very reckless decision, reckless move. It does not improve the security situation in Europe. The issue will be solved in any case. There are certain means to solve it, but it will not be beneficial for the interests of Sweden or Finland anymore being part of NATO.
I'm going to ask a question that's, of course, on my mind and on the minds of many, and good luck with an answer for this one, because I have none. In light of what's happened, as an example, the JCPOA with the United States making that deal, and of course never really living up to the standards set forth in the deal, and eventually just walking away from the deal. Certainly adding to that the Minsk Accords, etc. So we have issues where there would be certainly a problem trusting that the United States, but President Trump, certainly, I'll say this, the Trump administration certainly seems as though they genuinely want to end the conflict in some kind of a diplomatic manner, whether they can or not. How would you go about, or is there even a concept of how you could go about ensuring that a deal made could be held up in the long term in light of the history of breaking deals of previous administrations and, as you know, potentially future administrations?
Well, unfortunately, when you deal with the United States, with all the mercurious policies of the US ruling elite and the changing of administrations, which could bring about very drastic change of direction of where it goes, as we see right now with Trump administration in comparison to Biden administration. Of course, there are no guarantees that the United States would honor its agreement, and that there will not be a scenario when someone else comes and says that he is not respecting what Trump administration has achieved. But I think that there is a genuine desire with this administration to make things better for the United States, not only in the context of Ukrainian crisis, but also elsewhere. So, and this, as I feel, living here in the United States, working here in the United States in New York, I feel that it also corresponds to the wish, to the will of the majority of the population of this country. It's reflected not only the choice of the new president, but also the moods in the streets, the moods of people with whom we meet from time to time. Of course, I can't say that every American has the same opinion, but a lot of them reach out to us saying that we need to do something to stop this madness that is happening in the world. And of course, we don't need to remain on this dangerous slippery slope towards a possible nuclear confrontation. So that reassures that the policies of the current administration get quite enough of support in the society, and they are rooted deeply in the ambitions and the wishes of the US citizen. But another side of this story is not only how will the US behave afterwards, but how will the Kiev regime behave if he is part of some kind of a deal, which is not yet guaranteed as far as I understand, because there's a big question of legitimacy of Zelensky. He lost it technically almost a year ago in May last year, when he trampled on the constitution and he canceled the elections which were about to take place in accordance with the constitution. There is no justification in the constitution of the state of affairs that it is right now in Ukraine, and in fact there are no legitimate bodies in Ukraine. So even leaving aside the issue of Zelensky forbidding himself to enter in any negotiations, himself and his government to enter in any negotiations with the Russian government, even if we put aside this issue for a moment, there is a question of whether the next leader of Ukraine, if Ukraine survives, of course, this crisis, if the next leader honors the deal and the agreement that will be achieved. So for Zelensky, now it's not an option, in our view, to become part of this negotiation process, simply because we don't know whom he represents right now. He came to power in 2019 with a set of promises which were absolutely different from his achievements right now. So he steered the country in totally different direction, regardless of the fact that almost 3/4 of Ukrainian citizens voted for peace. They voted for good relations with Russia, good neighborly relations. He just ignored all this, and he led his country on the collision course with Russia, with the help of Western countries. As we all know right now, they were arming Ukraine under the smoke screen of the Minsk agreements. So we don't know what Ukrainians think right now if they are given the right to choose their leader. So what kind of leader will they choose, and what kind of program they will support? It's extremely unlikely that they will support Mr. Zelensky, who, according to certain polls, enjoys around 10% of support, and I think these figures are even more exaggerated. So how can we trust the future of the country in the hands of such a legitimate leader? This is a big question. This is even a bigger question in comparison to whether US will be able to honor this deal in a certain perspective.
Yes, I certainly agree with that. The issue for Russia is no one wants an unstable country or whatever would be left territory on their border. Certainly, that's an incubator for terrorism. Which brings me to my next question. There are Hungary, Romania, Poland. There are numerous countries in the region that may or may not wish to exercise historic claims on, historic claims on regions of Ukraine. Additionally, they certainly, even if they don't, will have border issues that will have to be dealt with. Do you feel that if the talks progress to that level, that there will be a time when you will need to bring in the other regional countries that may have historical claims or may attempt to exercise historical claims to certain parts of Ukraine?
Well, I don't want, frankly, to speculate on this, and I think it's too premature to raise this kind of questions, because we don't know yet the formula of how the talks on the peaceful resolution of Ukrainian crisis will take place. There was a very, I would say, very serious attempt to do so, as you know, in 2022, in April, where we already initialed this deal with the Ukrainian authorities, and it implied a lot of principles that can be revived right now in the possible agreement between Russia and Ukraine. But actually, there is no desire from the current Kiev regime to face the truth and to face the real situation on the battlefield, and to agree to certain meaningful discussion on what caused the crisis and how could we avoid the repetition of this situation in the future. So they still are being going from one extreme to another extreme. There are a lot of misleading statements. President Zelensky is ready to sell the mineral resources of his country to pay for the U.S. assistance. So he got the tune from the White House, and he tries now to cajole Mr. Trump and his team as much as he can, and he tries to sell his country, regardless of the fact that the mineral resources and all the richness of this country is the property of Ukrainian people according to the constitution. So he trampled on it once, and he is ready to trample on it on the one other time. And this is no surprise. So we don't know where it will bring the current Ukrainian power and the current Ukraine as a state, because if you are following the situation on the battlefield, this is very bad situation for Ukraine. The Russian troops are advancing. Zelensky is sticking to his Kursk adventure, and he's losing thousands of men. He's losing important military equipment there, and he continues to stick to this adventure. So nobody knows how it will end if there is no progress in the efforts to bring about some kind of a fair and sustainable solution. Because we made it absolutely clear that there is one thing that would be absolutely unacceptable to us as a precondition to any negotiations, and this is cessation of hostilities. Because we are not going to cessate the hostilities, to cease the hostilities. The ceasefire is not an option, because we understand, we saw it once in the Minsk package of measures when we were absolutely cheated, and we will not make this mistake the second time. So we understand that any cessation of hostilities will be used to rearm Ukraine and to make it heal its wounds and continue to fight Russian army. This is not what we are interested in. So we will continue our special military operation, because the aims that we put as an outcome of this special military operation actually are the same aims that we are putting as an outcome of any peaceful negotiations on Ukraine, possible peaceful negotiations. So we are ready to achieve them through diplomatic means, and we were ready to achieve them through diplomatic means from day one, even before the start of the special military operation. So I don't think that it is realistic to hope that Russia will deviate from this position, which is quite clear and which is explained and which is based on our experience of dealing with Ukraine, of dealing with the West, and which is based on the core national interest of my country.
One of the things that's in the news quite frequently is the issue of foreign troops on Ukrainian soil. You know, the Europeans are constantly saying, oh, we could put peacekeepers, as it were, whatever they mean by that. But and the latest that I've heard was that the Russian side has said any foreign troops, I know there had been discussion of no foreign troops, or that any foreign troops would have to be okayed by the United Nations. There's a lot of going around here, but it seems to me that initially foreign troops on Ukraine soil was the main problem, and why would Russia want to return to that? But I don't know your thoughts on foreign troops, and in particular troops from the Europeans as a result of any kinds of negotiations ending up on Ukrainian soil.
Well, I can confirm to you that our position is very strict on this issue. Indeed, there are a lot of speculations about possible peacekeeping mission. But there are two conditions for a peacekeeping missions. First, there should be a peace to keep, so there should be a ceasefire, and we are not there. And I explained to you why this is not an option for us in this crisis. Secondly, to establish theoretically, hypothetically, any peacekeeping mission, there should be agreement of two sides, and of course, the Russian side will never give agreement to any presence of peacekeepers, especially peacekeepers from European countries. But again, peacekeeping is not an option at this stage. So it means that if there are certain regular foreign troops, because there are a lot of irregular foreign troops, NATO troops now in Ukrainian territory, if there are regular foreign troops introduced in the framework of some unilateral peacekeeping efforts or whatever, they will be considered to be a legitimate target for our forces, and with all the consequences that are very easy to imagine.
And last but not least, I would ask you, we only have a couple more minutes left. There's been discussion by the Trump administration about asking China or some other countries that allies of Russia to be involved in resolving of the conflict. What is Russia's position on that?
I think that China and a lot of other partners of Russia in BRICS and in the global south, they're trying to do a lot to counter the narrative that was pushed by Ukraine and by its backers from the outset, with these non-realistic requirements that are absolutely detached from any reality about the possible parameters of peace in the Ukrainian conflict. And they are doing a lot in this regard. We see it in the UN. They have organized a special group of friends of peace for Ukraine, which can be considered as an alternative to this infamous Bürgenstock process and to this infamous Zelensky formula, which is not a peace formula at all. So they are doing quite a lot, but they understand that the core I would say problems should be solved first and foremost in the format of negotiations between Russia and the US, not Russia, US, Ukraine, not Russia, US, Ukraine, Europe, but Russia and the US. And President Trump repeatedly said that it's absolutely within the power of the US administration to solve the Ukrainian crisis. Of course, he has now taken more cautious stance, maybe having learned about all the root causes and the nuances of this crisis. But nevertheless, this conflict, I would say the preparation for this conflict started the moment when the US began actively meddling in the Ukrainian affairs. I would say that it happened in 2014, but it doesn't mean that it didn't happen before that. It happened from the outset, from the establishment of independent Ukraine, and we now know because of these processes around US aid, we know of how big was the interference of the United States and how much of the so-called independent media and NGOs were funded, in fact, by the US money, of the taxpayers' money. So we now have all this picture like an X-ray, and it is not a surprise that the US was part of this crisis from the beginning. Maybe not direct part, but it was masterminding this crisis. So if the US changes the course, if the US reviews its involvement in Ukraine, and if we manage to come to terms on how these things should be avoided in the future, I think that this will be 99.9% of the resolution of Ukrainian crisis. And of course, Zelensky doesn't play any role here because he's a puppet. He doesn't have any decisions to take in this regard. All decisions will be taken in Washington and Moscow. That's how I view this situation. Maybe it will sound a little bit harsh to some tender ears, but that's the reality that we face.
Thank you very much. We've been talking with the Honorable Dmitry Polyanskiy. He's a Russian ambassador, and I appreciate, sir, I really appreciate you taking your time to speak with us, and look forward to maybe talking to you again sometime in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. All right. Thank you all very much. Certainly, we've enjoyed Ambassador Polyanskiy. We did agree to 30 minutes, and I wanted to make sure that I kept to our agreed schedule. Everyone, I'll ask you to share this on all your social media platforms, whether it's X or Facebook, you name it. As you know, I'm not on X, so I can't do that. Anyone who can, if you can afford to donate to the channel, you see everything: PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, all of that stuff. That's certainly appreciated. If you can't, that's okay. Take care of your family and just share this on all your social media platforms with all your friends. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. I'm out.